Okay, Paul Richmond is an internationally recognized visual artist and activist whose career, it's better without this, activist whose career has included exhibitions in galleries and museums throughout the United States, as well as publications in numerous art journals and anthologies. His work is collected by individuals around the globe. As an illustrator, he has created over 400 novel cover illustrations. That I didn't know that. It's amazing. And he is a co-founder of the You Will Rights Project, an organization that empowers those who have experienced bullying to speak out creatively through art. He is executive director of Art Makes Us, a virtual creative space dedicated to providing opportunities for each individual to discover and nurture the artist within. It's great. Paul lives with his husband Dennis in, it says Monterey. Marina, Monterey. Yeah, California.
Old bio.
Oh, yeah. And he is represented by Muse Art Services. So, let me get the slide ready.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Yes, again. All right. Well, I really appreciate being invited to come here, and I've had my artwork on display in Edi's gallery for the past month. I love Edi. I love her work. I think it's so cool that you opened your own gallery here so that people can come and see your work in person, and that you're also including other artists from the community and helping spotlight us. So I love what you're doing and happy to be part of it. So I am an artist. I'm also an activist. I'm a proud gay man. I'm a teacher. And I moved to Monterey in 2016. My husband got a job out here. Originally, I'm from Ohio. I had never heard of Monterey before. I did not know what I was in for. I Googled it and saw a bunch of pictures of a bridge. And I'm like, so we're moving to this bridge? What is this place? But it actually turned out to be a really great move for me as well. We love it here. A lot of great opportunities have happened since we arrived, so I'm very grateful for all of that. But as you can see from this little intro here, I do a lot of different things. I kind of go against that advice that I was given in art school, that artists are supposed to pick one thing and just do that consistently all the time because collectors want, you know, that type of consistency and reliability. I'm way too ADHD for that, so I do everything that I want whenever I want to, and so far it's worked out okay. But here's where my my artistic journey began. As a little kid, probably like a lot of artists, all I wanted to do was draw, and my parents did not know what to do with me really because they were not artists. My dad worked for the railroad, my mom worked for a mortgage company, and they just had this kid that got up early, like before them, every morning and went down to the dining room table, and they said I would have 300 or 400 drawings done by the time they woke up. Now these were not good drawings. These were like any drawings any little kid would do, but it was just that I loved doing it. There was just something about it that was in me, and I had to take those crayons and make those pictures. And thankfully they supported that, and they found an artist in our neighborhood named Linda Regula, who agreed to, reluctantly at first, to start teaching me once a week in her studio. And I say reluctantly because Linda had only taught adults, and she taught oil painting. And I was 3. And when they called her and asked, and I don't think that they actually told her my age, and when we showed up at her door, she said that she kind of was in her mind trying to figure out how to get out of it because she was like, I don't know what to do with this little guy. But I went into her house and I saw her work, which was kind of like being in here. It was, you know, floor to ceiling, these gorgeous, colorful paintings, and I just knew that was where I was supposed to be. I hadn't grown up around art, and so it was like arriving in Oz, and like this is my life. This is what I want. And Linda's work, a lot of her paintings dealt with trauma from her childhood. She had a very difficult early life of abuse, poverty, neglect, and so I also learned at a young age that art can be more than just a pretty picture on a wall, but it can actually be a way of expressing yourself and communicating and sharing important ideas and also healing yourself. So it was really a perfect fit for me. Linda was an incredible teacher. She, not knowing how to work with kids actually was a plus because she didn't treat me like a kid. She just talked to me like I was an adult. And I went to her house or her studio every week, and she let me paint whatever I wanted to paint, which was a lot of Disney characters at first. My mom still has some of these giant oil paintings of Disney characters hanging in her house. But that was where my art journey started, and I knew right away that was what I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to be Linda, really, was what I wanted. I just thought she was so cool. So there's the two of us. That's around the time when I first started with her. And there's one of my very first oil paintings. Can anybody tell what that is? Mary Poppins, that's right, yes. So, and already a kind of fashionista there. And there's some more of my early works, kind of arranged in order from the top left was age 4. And by the time we get here, I think I was 8 with the snowman. One funny little story about the Superman painting. See, it's all Disney princesses, and then there's Superman. That's because my dad was concerned that I had too many female role models as a kid, because I wanted to be Linda, I wanted to be Snow White. I kind of wanted to be the Wicked Queen, actually. I thought she was cool, the coolest. So one weekend, he said, we're going to sit and binge watch all of the Superman movies. And that was how he was going to cure this problem. So I said, okay, so we did. And at the end of it, he said, what did you think? And I said, oh, I love them. I want to be just like Lois Lane when I grow up. And that was when he gave up. So, but no, I was very supported as an artist when I was growing up, and that became a really important part of my identity. And when I started to experience a lot of bullying at school, the art, my identity as an artist, is what gave me kind of, I think, the confidence to get through that. So there was a big shift in me around middle school. I had switched schools. In the new school, there was just a lot of bullying. I did not fit in. A lot of kids, go through that, and for different reasons. In my case, it was because I was so effeminate compared to the other boys, and that was not acceptable. They knew there was something different about me, even though I didn't. And so I became the target of a lot of the bullies, and it was verbal, it was physical, it was every form of bullying that there was at the time. There was no cyberbullying yet, thank goodness, so at least for me it was over at 2:30. But it was still really intense, and I understand how kids get to that place where the bullying is so intense that they don't feel like they are worth, that it's not worth going on, that they don't belong in this world. I did feel like that. And I would go to Linda's class still, and she saw a difference in me, that I was more withdrawn, I wasn't as, bubbly, and I didn't want to talk as much. So she would ask me what was wrong, and I didn't want to talk about it because I felt very ashamed by the names I was being called. I didn't even understand them, but I knew that they were bad. And so Linda said, okay, you don't have to talk about it. Paint it. And I remembered seeing that she had done that herself in her work, and so I tried it. And that was the first painting that I made that was kind of about telling my story, not a Disney story or something else I had seen, but telling my story. And it's called The Piece That Doesn't Fit. I was 13 when I painted it, and every day at lunch during recess, that was the worst time of the day because that's when you were the least supervised. So I would sit on these steps by the cafeteria and read or draw while all the other kids played and did whatever. And I just wanted to be left alone. And so I painted myself in that piece of the puzzle that didn't fit. And that was the best way I could describe what I was feeling at the time. I just knew that I was different. And making that painting helped, so I made a lot more. All throughout my kind of teenage years, I did a lot of these sort of, I guess, angsty-looking paintings and drawings because I was venting whatever was going on in my head that I didn't feel comfortable actually verbalizing. And I think that's what really saved me. I think if I hadn't had art, I don't know what would have happened. So I'm very grateful. Then I went on to art school. I had not yet come out of the closet too. I should say I grew up in Ohio in a small conservative town and went to Catholic school, conservative Republican family. It was not a safe space. I didn't even know what gay was, honestly, except for what I heard about in religion class in school, and that was not good. So coming out wasn't even an option. And I went to college in Columbus, Ohio, so I was still living at home when I went to school. And as you can see by the work that I made in college, it's very different from what I do now because I didn't know who I was yet. And I think it's very difficult to make authentic art if you don't know who you are, if you're not being honest with yourself about who you are. So for me, college was a time of learning some technical skills, and nothing against landscape painting or anything like that, but I'm not a landscape painter. I don't even like going outside. So what is this, But anyway, that's what I did in college. But shortly after I graduated, my friend Melissa and I started a mural painting business together, and we traveled all around painting murals, ceilings, and all kinds of, we did things in libraries, and it was really fun. But Melissa and I became really close. And I had moved out of my parents' house by then. She was the first person I felt comfortable actually coming out to, and I kind of figured out who I was and was able to tell her. And
if I can just interrupt, sorry, I think it's my page. You started painting murals. Not everybody does that. Could you just give quick
sure,
inspiration on how did you, because it's so magnificent.
Thank you. I studied illustration in college. I guess I should say that to you. My degree was in illustration.
Okay.
So I love telling stories with my art. And people, when you say you're an artist, a lot of times they will just ask you to do a mural. I don't think I really set out to be a muralist, but the first one I did was in an elementary school, and I had known the teacher there, and they just said, hey, do you want to come paint a mural? And so Melissa and I did while we were still in college, and we enjoyed it, so we did some more. And when you do things that are kind of in a public space, other people see them and they spread the word. So I can't really take credit for it, but I just knew that I enjoyed what we were painting, and I liked making art that was kind of in spaces where people would interact with it and see it every day. It wasn't like it was in a prestigious museum or gallery somewhere. It's similar to illustration, like in a book or in a magazine. It's art for everyday people. Anyone can appreciate it and enjoy it, and I still like that. I still do murals today.
Thank you.
Here's another. This was the mural that Melissa and I painted in my condo to celebrate my coming out. We painted a mural of Cher because I love Cher. So I also started, this was when I started working for a publishing company as a freelance illustrator, and I did over 400 covers, as Edi said. They published LGBTQ plus fiction, and it was I loved working with them and knowing that I was helping to bring these stories to light, because there were not stories like that available for me when I was growing up. And they had a young adult imprint. We did a lot of YA books, and they would donate them to schools and libraries all over the country so that they would be accessible to people. And so I was very proud of that. I loved doing that work. It felt important. I think a lot of what I do is about taking negative situations, either in my life or in other people's lives, and trying to turn it around in some way. So that was kind of what the covers were about for me. And then I also started really painting my own feelings and experiences as I was going through that process of coming out. And interestingly, all of these paintings, which all deal with different aspects of what I was going through at that time, I had no intention of ever showing them to anyone. As much of a show-off as I am, I would paint these, and as soon as they dried, I would unstretch them, roll them up, and put them, ironically enough, in the closet. Because I just thought, well, I'm just painting it for me to get this feeling out. Who's going to care about this? Because it's so personal. And also, I still wasn't out to my family, and I was still living in the same town, so I didn't want them to see it. I felt I was still kind of a bit afraid of that. So I painted them because it was an important part of my process, but it wasn't until Melissa came over one day after mural painting with me and she happened to see one, and then I was like, oh, you like that? There's like 20 more over here. And so she opened them all up and she said, Paul, this is what you need to be showing. This is what people are going to respond to. And I was like, why? Like, who's going to care about it? Really, I didn't get it. And but then it all kind of clicked. I mean, thinking back on my childhood and knowing how much people, including myself, responded to Linda's paintings, which were also very personal, I did decide to start putting them out and entering them into galleries, group shows first. That was how I started. It's hard to get into galleries, and it's especially hard if it is 20 years ago in the Midwest for someone who's painting stuff like what I was painting to get into galleries. But I did get my work into some group shows. I talked with a lot of gallery owners who said, we love your work, we love your technique, but we can't represent you because no one's going to buy this. They actually encouraged me to use a different name. Say, keep painting your gay stuff, but if you want to, have a career, use a different name and paint something that mainstream audiences will want. And I thought about it, and I know artists who do that, and I don't criticize them for that because people have to do whatever they're going to do to be successful. But to say that you can't be gay and in the arts is kind of absurd if you think about it. But also, I didn't want to go back in the closet at that point. So I was putting my work out into these group shows and also finding a big audience of people who really were responding to it online. This was kind of at the beginning stages of social media. 20 years ago, blogs were really big then, so my work was starting to get shared on different blogs and things. So it was at this weird transition time when galleries used to be the only way that an artist could be successful. If you weren't represented by a gallery, you couldn't have a career. And I was running into a lot of dead ends there, even though there was a really great public response to my work. So I just found my own way to reach people by putting it everywhere I could online. And people started buying it directly from me, and other opportunities started coming along because of that. So I think when you get a no, and anybody in here who's an artist knows that this career comes with so much rejection, you have to, that no doesn't necessarily mean no, it just means you have to reroute, go a different way, find another avenue to get where you need to go. 18 years ago, I met Dennis, my husband. That's a painting I did of him. He is very different from me in many ways, but we are a perfect match together. He is quiet, so that's one big difference. He's very thoughtful. He's very grounded. He's a nurse practitioner. He's very empathetic. We kind of have that in common, I think. But we balance each other out really well. And Dennis helped me take all of my crazy big ideas and be a little more focused and targeted and make goals and write things down. That was a new concept. And make a plan. And so I give him a lot of credit too for helping me to kind of get started. And this is a crazy story that I just have to share with you because this is really where things took off for me. I don't know if any of you remember Tammy Faye Baker from the 80s.
Sure.
Yeah, exactly, yes.
Yeah.
So very big presence, at least in the Midwest where I was from, on TV all the time when I was growing up. And I was captivated. I'm like, well, who is this? It's kind of like a drag queen that I didn't know what drag queens were, but it was like watching a drag queen on TV. And as an adult, like 18 years ago, I found this documentary about her called The Eyes of Tammy Faye, and I highly recommend it if you want to be entertained. It talks about what happened in her life after the scandal with her, church ministry thing kind of blew up. She became such an advocate for the LGBT community, and she even when she had her show, she had a gay man with AIDS on her Christian televangelist TV show. She interviewed him and was encouraging her viewers to be more empathetic and compassionate and to take care, treat your children kindly, don't judge them. So I really respected her. And when she passed away, I made this painting that was kind of a tribute to her. And then her manager saw it online somewhere. Well, I had a show in Columbus, and I had my friend a drag queen helped me unveil it, dressed as Tammy. And then Tammy Faye's real manager saw it online somehow and invited me to come out to Palm Springs with the painting and share it at her memorial that they were having. So, and I got to meet quite an interesting selection of people at the Tammy Faye Memorial, including Cloris Leachman, Larry King, Ron Jeremy, randomly enough, if you know who that is. If you don't, I'm not telling you. Interesting conversation topic. Maybe that can be your prompt at the end. Who knows who Ron Jeremy is? Learn a lot about people that way. But anyhow, the people who made the Tammy Faye documentary were there, and they owned an art gallery in LA. And it's also the same people who make RuPaul's Drag Race now, the TV show. But they had an art gallery, and they invited me to start showing my work in their gallery. So I always credit Tammy for really helping my art career to get started. Then one of the first paintings I did for a show at that gallery was the Dolly Pop Guild. They did a lot of shows that were inspired by pop culture. And they had a show that was all about Dolly Parton, who was one of my biggest heroes growing up. I would always get in trouble for sneaking into my mom's closet and putting on her outfits and pretending I was Dolly. So I painted the scene from The Wizard of Oz, except Dolly is Glinda, and I'm wearing the red heels, and we're not in Oz, we're in Dollywood. So that was and I really enjoyed that, and so I started doing a lot more kind of pop culture, some political themed paintings, and these were all for that gallery. That one is called Batmobama. That was during the first time Obama was running. So I used the Batman, the old Batman series, and we have the villains down in the corner. And then Noah's Gay Wedding Cruise, I painted that. Because I just like to never do anything controversial. This was actually the most controversial painting I ever made, by the way. It completely blew up online. You would not believe the amount of hate that resulted from that painting. But it also taught me that controversy can be a really good thing for an artist, because I've also never sold so many prints of a painting in my life. So sometimes I feel like if you don't piss some people off, maybe you're not trying hard enough. So anyway, I love painting figures, and ultimately this is kind of where I ended up, and still what I do. I love people. I love all different kinds of people. So these are paintings from a series called War Paint, where I made my friends kind of pour paint on themselves, and then I painted them in a really textural way, and that was sort of new for me. I had always painted very smooth, rendered, detailed things, and I wanted to break out of that and be more expressive and feel more creative throughout the whole process of painting, not just when I was conceptualizing it, but when I was actually painting. I wanted that energy to show up on the canvas. So I committed to doing a show at this gallery in Provincetown, 12 paintings, and I said I'm not going to use a paintbrush for any of these paintings. And I had never painted without a paintbrush, but this is kind of how I operate. I like to just dive in head first and hope for the best. And it worked out. It really freed me up. And you'll see what a difference it made from that point on in my work. It totally shifted things. So
medium, they're
all oil.
Oils.
Yes, they're all oil. So there's some more from the War Paint series. Oh, and this will just kind of show you a little bit of my crazy process. I post a lot of videos and things online because I like watching when other artists do that. I learn a lot from YouTube, and so I try to contribute and share what I do too. But I bring up my images from chaos. So I like to just pour paint on the canvas, create something very abstract, and then kind of find the image within that. And I leave elements of each layer showing so that it just kind of keeps building until it feels finished. But I don't really paint that fast, though. I wish. Okay, I won't make you watch the whole thing, but you get the idea. And there's just some more of my kind of figurative work. I like painting all different kinds of people and learning about their stories. And I would say I try to bring out some aspect of that person or something about our interaction in the painting. So in other words, it's not just about what someone looks like. I think it's the illustrator in me. I want there to be a story. So just for example, This one was our friend Andrea, and she talked about how one of her big struggles in life was accepting her own natural hair, because when she was growing up, she had to use all kinds of chemicals and treatments and things to try and smooth it out and make it, look the way that I guess was deemed acceptable. And so then as an adult, she decided to, forget that and, embrace her natural hair. Am I doing okay on time? I know you have a schedule. I don't want to screw you up here. I can keep going for a while. I still have some more stuff. Hi. I do have one good story here that I need to tell you about this one. You can just give me the when you're ready for me to stop. This one, I have a friend back in Columbus, the first drag queen I ever met, Nina West. The first time I went to a gay bar 20 years ago, I walked in. Oh, I had Googled, what are you supposed to wear to a gay bar? Don't do that if you're because I will tell you, I showed up wearing a mesh belly shirt. It was bad. But anyway, she was there performing, and she saw me waiting in line at the bar, and I think she could tell I was, new. And so she came over and was very welcoming and friendly and just made me feel at home. And she has gone on to become really famous herself. She was on RuPaul's show, and she's been in a bunch of Broadway things. But I just remember how nice she was to me, and how I discovered a really welcoming, wonderful community because of her and because of the people that were there. And growing up in the Catholic church and Catholic school, I always saw this stained glass window. Well, it wasn't quite like that, but it was similar. And so I made this painting replacing the faces with people who are from that drag community. And it wasn't intended to really upset people. Sometimes I do things to be controversial, but I really wasn't trying to in this case. But this really made some people angry when I released it. And so much so that Nina texted me one morning and said, "Paul, do you realize that your painting has caused a riot in Greece?" And I said, "Excuse me?" And she sent me a link to an article about it. So there was a fake news article that came out in Athens saying that, so there's this charity there called the Onassis Foundation. And the fake news article said that the Onassis Foundation had bought this painting and it was hanging up in their building, which was not true. The painting was in a gallery in LA at that time, so it was just completely made up. But it made people so angry that they organized a riot, like a true protest / riot outside of the Onassis Foundation building, where people were screaming and had signs and all kinds of stuff because they thought that they had this sacrilegious painting that they had used their nonprofit money to buy. I'm sure the people inside were like, "What the heck is this?" But again, I'm not upset about it. I love people reacting to my work, however, whatever that means. And the painting did sell the next day because of that publicity. So, cash in on the hate. That's my message. But I paint all kinds of people. I love the drag community. I love the art that goes into that. So I paint a lot of my friends who do that kind of work. This is my friend Bryden, who is an awesome transgender artist and activist. That piece was from the War Paint series too. And one of his big struggles in life was top surgery. So that's why he's putting the war paint on his chest. These are paintings from the show that I had at the PG Art Center when I first met Edi. She was in the gallery right next door. So this was a show called Promised Land, where I used symbolism of kind of like an amusement park or theme park to represent different things. We got here. And this was one of the pieces from that show, a portrait of a young man who had reached out to me on Instagram about 5 or 6 years ago. And he lived in a part of the world where it's very unsafe to be queer, but he related to the themes in my work, and we just had this really great connection, and he shared some of his artwork with me, which was beautiful. I think he was 16 or 17 at the time, and I said, "You should apply to come to art school in the US and come to a place where you can be yourself, and because your work is great, you'll get a scholarship, and also you you'll be free to find your identity. So I sent him information about international scholarships and didn't hear back from him for a while. And then he wrote and told me he got a full scholarship to the Art Institute of Chicago. And he just graduated a couple years ago. And so we've stayed in touch. He's doing incredible, very conceptual work now. But I painted him for the Promised Land show. I asked him if I could, and he posed and sent me some photos. And I put a merry-go-round behind him to represent how in a merry-go-round, the horses just keep going around in the same circle, but I was so inspired by how he, got off the track that was, kind of laid out for him and went a different way. So that's kind of what that one is about. This one, American Dreamer, deals with my kind of feelings about the treatment of immigrant children at the border. So a lot of my paintings are just, if something really pisses me off, I'll make a painting about it. More kind of a hodgepodge of stuff. I've done a lot of painting, so we'll be here all day if we talk about all of them. That's my husband, Dennis. My sister, Laura. She's a chef. This was for a show about masks that I did. I got a wonderful commission a few years ago. This is kind of a full circle moment. Dolly Parton wanted me to make a painting for her living room. And it was totally random. Her creative director happened to follow me on Instagram. I didn't even know it. And he messaged me and said, would you do commissions? I said, sure. And he called me that night. And when he finally said who it was for, I had to just try and act cool, and not scream into the phone. He was like, would you mind bringing it to her house and, hanging it up? I was like, I think I could probably do that. And my friend Denise, who's here, actually went with me because, I don't know how to use power tools, so she had to hang it. But we went together, and that was a really fun moment. And there's me sitting on Dolly's couch in her living room. So it was actually really cool because, like I said, growing up, I wanted to be her and to grow up. And first of all, still have so much respect for her as an adult and see all the wonderful things that she does in the world. But then to know that, I was able to make something that she can appreciate. I just love that. Very proud of that. A few more pieces here. This one is a recent painting I made that is about, I learned that Hans Christian Andersen, who wrote The Little Mermaid, was a gay man, but couldn't obviously admit that. And he was infatuated with this other man. And the whole story of The Little Mermaid is about their love story that could never really happen, because the day that the other man wrote to him and told him he was getting married to a woman, that was when Hans started writing The Little Mermaid. And it's all about, this mermaid that wants to be with a human but can't because they're from two different worlds. And I just thought there was something really powerful about the way he channeled his feelings into a story that has endured for all these years. And most people don't even really know what inspired it, but that's kind of the power of art. We connect to things because of the emotion and that kind of human quality that we put into our work that other people, you just can't help. I think that's what makes art so powerful. You can communicate things in ways that words alone people might not hear. And then this is a painting I also just recently did, remembering being a kid and wanting to be Snow White. So that's called I Am Snow White. Every day I go outside, pretend I was Snow White, but then at the end of the day I had to go back into my little, Midwestern suburban house and be just a normal boy again. Recent mural. I do a lot of mural work still, my friend Brenda and I. This was at Open Ground Studios in Seaside, which is where I have a studio space. Wonderful art studio. Denise is the founder of that. If you want to come join us there. It's an awesome place, but we just did this mural, and a lot of the artists from the studio helped us. I don't know what I have here. Oh, this was a mural that we did in Sand City. My friend Brian and I painted on the asphalt. This is an example of me saying yes to something and not really even knowing how to do it, but I was like, oh, we'll figure it out, and we did. Let's skip to the end here so you can see it. There it is. It's like they have a little area called the Art Park where they do events and stuff, so that was fun challenge. I love those. And this was a painting that I very recently finished that is sort of a tribute to my childhood art teacher, back to where this all started. Linda passed away in 2020. I was with her family. We remained very close all through the years, and her family had me come back. I was in the hospital with her. And just thinking about what an impact she had on my life, how different my life would be if I had not had a mentor like that. And tragically, about a year after she passed away, the studio building where her work was all kind of mostly stored, she had 600 or 700 paintings in there, it caught on fire, and the paintings were all lost. And it just broke my heart, because her work, seeing her work, was what made me want to do this. And so I had them in my head, and I didn't want them to be lost forever. So I had remembered this painting that she did that was of herself as a little girl laying in the grass, like reaching up for the stars. So I painted myself in that position, and then in the stars I put images from some of her paintings that were lost in that fire, because I wanted to preserve them in my own way, and also just show that they are still important, that they are a part of this cycle that is continuing through me into all of my students, and that's really what a legacy is, I believe. Linda and I, 12 years ago, started the You Will Rise project, which is all about empowering young people who have experienced bullying to express themselves through art. And we do workshops, we publish their work online, we do exhibits, public art displays, because like I said, if I had not had art, I don't know that I would be here. If I didn't have a way to unload those heavy feelings that I had. And if you're not aware, it's even worse for kids today because of cyberbullying, because of the constant exposure kids have to each other. They can send these horrible, vicious messages 24/7, and young people who don't have confidence in themselves, don't have fully formed identities yet, they don't know how to cope with that. So creating art about it and getting to have it displayed publicly and educate the community about those experiences, it really changes their lives. So we've been doing that now for like about 12 years, and my friend Angela back there is a part of that project with me. We do all kinds of important work, and it's very healing for me too, and for everybody else who's involved. This was a You Will Rise piece that we did also at Open Ground Studios, where we created portraits of 3 people from the community using 30,000 puzzle pieces, and it's representing that idea that the puzzle doesn't have to go together the way it's supposed to. You can be yourself, you be who you are. That was a great community project. And then these are just some pictures of activism, that various activist things that I've done, because I think being an artist helped me find my voice as an activist. I did not start out as someone who would be like leading a march or speaking into a bullhorn or anything. I'm much more comfortable expressing myself on canvas, but because of that and because of the support that I've received, I feel confident now speaking out about things that are important to me, and I do that as much as I possibly can. Even my wedding was a protest. Dennis and I got married before it was legal, so we went with 24 other couples who all lived in states where it was not legal yet, to Washington, D.C., and we had a wedding ceremony in front of the Supreme Court building. And a week later, that was when they overturned the Defense of Marriage Act. So it was a real intense time. There were a lot of protests and things happening then. Wow. And I'm still doing work like that today. My friend Bryden and I do this project called Queertopia, where we've done it twice now. We did it once here in Monterey, and then this past year we went to Colgate University and spent a week. And it's all about creating paintings of queer joy. So we had the LGBTQ students at Colgate send us photos of themselves representing queer joy, and we made paintings and then sold them all, and all the money went to the Trans Lifeline. So it was also about teaching them how to use art as activism. Great project. And Bryden's actually coming here on Monday. He lives in Ohio, but we do a figure drawing class together called Redrawing Masculinity. We started it during COVID on Zoom, but because Bryden is trans, we both have had different experiences with what masculinity means, and growing up neither of us felt like we fit into the mold society had for us. So it's a figure drawing class, but it's also a lot more than that, because normally in a figure drawing class, you kind of objectify the model a bit. You're just looking at them as shapes and form. But in our class, we're talking the whole time. And you have to think of us as a human. And we're sharing things, and we're also asking the people to share their own stories. So we are doing this on Wednesday at Open Graph, I keep pointing at you, at Open Graph Studios in Seaside. If you would like to, we have just a couple spots left. It's pretty full, but you are welcome to join us. You just go to redrawmask.com to sign up if you would like to come and draw with us. It's a really fun, everybody's welcome. Anyone over 18, that is. And then here's Art Makes Us. That's my online art business where we do video classes, because I just think it's important to make art as accessible for people as possible. And I started this the week after Linda passed away, because I knew how important that was for me to have exposure to art, and I know it's being taken out of schools, and not just kids, but adults need it too. Everybody needs to be able to express themselves. I think everyone's an artist in one way or another. They just get taught that they're not supposed to be a lot of times, or it gets, they become afraid to express themselves. So here's my last little thing I'm plugging, then I'm going to stop. I've been working on this project, this book, about my life. So if you're not sick of hearing about me yet, everything I've just said, plus a lot more, is in this book that is coming out October 1st. It has kind of all the artwork I've made from childhood until now, with stories and then commentary from people, important people in my life. And we're having a book release party on October 19th. So come celebrate with us if you want to hear even more. And then that's where all the places you can find me online. All right. Any questions? Yeah, thank you. Any questions, comments?
Let's do Q&A for 10 minutes or so. So
if there's possibly anything else left that I haven't said, yes.
Hi, very good to meet you.
Thank you.
Good speech and presentation. Thank you so much. I'm a former artist.
Former?
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll talk about that in a minute.
Talking and teaching.
Okay.
My wife is a painter also.
Oh yes, I saw she shared her work with me already. Yeah.
So what we are wondering is usually how you value. For sales. How you value your artwork. How do you decide how much your artwork?
That's the thing that every artist hates the most, I think. But when I first started out, and I didn't know what I was doing, and I was so scared to even put a price on it. Actually, really, that was one of the things that my husband helped me with a lot, because he had worked in an art gallery, and it was a gallery that did a really good job and sold the work, and they had high prices. And so he said, Paul, you're not charging enough. You have to, your work has value, and that's what that number means. And it's not that you're trying to exploit people, but if you don't value your own work, nobody else is going to. So I always advise people, and I do this myself, when I started out, I picked a price that felt right, that I knew that I would be comfortable never seeing that painting again in exchange for that amount. And then every time I sell a few paintings, I increase the prices across the board on all of my work. But basically my pricing is just based on size. So I don't make it any more complicated than that, because even though there are times when a small painting might take longer than a big painting or whatever, collectors, at least what I found, is they want a pricing system that makes sense. And also it makes it so I don't have to think about it too much. I know if it's this size canvas, it's that price. So that's how I do it. And I also do that knowing that if it's sold in a gallery or somewhere, that I'll only be getting 50% of that. And I have to make sure that that 50% number is a number that I'm comfortable with. In general, though, I don't like sitting around looking at my own paintings, so I don't get too upset when they sell. If you look at your own work too long, you just start to find everything that you don't like about it. So I'm happy to let them go. But no, it's about valuing your work, and also just knowing that I wanted this to be my career. And I think that it is difficult for artists to do that, because most of us would do this whether we were selling or not. And people take advantage of that sometimes, especially like friends and family. They're like, oh, well, you love doing this. Could you just paint, my daughter, or could you paint my dog, or whatever it is? And it's like, well, yes, but here's what it will cost you, because this is actually my job. And I had to get comfortable with that and take myself seriously. So it really just depends on the person. I always just say, make sure you're getting enough, but also make sure you're not charging too much when you're first starting out, because you never want to have to lower your prices. Collectors don't like that. They like seeing that your work is going up in value. So it's tricky, but I don't know if that answered your question, but that's some of what goes into my thought process about that. Yes.
I'd also add on that he photographs all of his work.
Mm-hmm.
I assume all. I feel like it's all of it.
Just so not the bad ones. No.
But then prints can be made later too. So.
Oh yeah, prints are cool. Everyone should do prints, because you can sell the same painting hundreds of times, and also you can sell a print for much less. So it makes it accessible to people who might not be able to afford the original.
So you edition and then let them know.
Yeah, so I do 3 different sizes, so 3 different editions, and they're all limited edition, and I love that. I've sold thousands of prints, and it's very cool. Any other questions?
I just heard on the radio recently, NPR, about an organization called RTA, which is art. It started in '96. I'm not sure if I can come up with what the initials stand for, but it's somebody who's inspired like you are to work with prisoners.
Oh, nice.
For a rehabilitation training in art, I think is probably what the RTA stands for.
Nice.
And it was really very moving. I had trouble staying on the road, driving, and then they quoted the recidivism rate in people who've been through this RTA program as being 3% over, say, a 5-year period. I don't remember. Whereas the typical prisoner who has been in for a number of years, the recidivism rate is 60%.
Yeah.
And this is all because they'd had an analogous experience to what you had. They found a way to express something. And interestingly, the person who was being interviewed was in for 25 years for a crime he didn't commit. Oh, by the way.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So he had a lot to paint about.
Yeah, a lot to paint about. But anyway, I just thought it was everything you're saying about the healing power of art.
Yes, it is, and it's so true. Like, no matter whether it's people who are dealing with severe health issues, psychological issues. I have friends who use art with people who have serious brain injuries, and it's amazing what the artistic process does for them. Everybody should make art in one way or another. I really believe that. I think we would have a much better world if people had a way of just expressing themselves. And we put too much emphasis on the finished product in our society, but that's just a result of our capitalist mindset that, well, what can I sell this? Is it good enough? Who cares? Like, just make it, because it's the self-expression that matters. But we've seen major changes in the kids through the You Will Rise project just in a 4 or 5 week span. It's unreal. I mean, the kids who come into those workshops sometimes go to the farthest corners of the room. They don't make eye contact with anyone at the first day. And by the end, they are giving speeches in front of, an entire room full of people. And their parents, we stay connected with them. And it's amazing to see what they go on to do after that. Some of them had dropped out of school because the bullying was so bad, and then they found their way back in. They've gone on with one of the girls who was in our very first workshop, just graduated from college, and she's now working and doing social work and very similar kinds of things to what we were doing. So it's amazing the difference you can make in a short time, but by just giving people permission to be creative. Yes.
Will you come to Monterey High again?
I thought you looked familiar. You've heard this speech twice now. Yes, anytime. I love talking to especially high school kids. Yes. You tell them. Take my card. Tell them anytime. I'll be there. What year are you going to be?
I'm a senior now.
Oh, nice. I'm going to ask you questions. Are you going to go into art?
I'm thinking of it. I actually saw Sierra that she said she was an art therapist.
Yes.
And I was thinking I would do like study in that or becoming an art teacher.
Nice.
Because I don't think I could like handle doing art my whole life because I get burnt out very easily.
Sure.
But I think these two like career pathways are like something I like to do.
That's wonderful.
So,
And yeah, like being an artist doesn't mean that it has to be your sole source of it. I mean, I do lots of things. You see, I teach. I do all kinds of public speaking. So you can be an artist whether it's your full-time career or not. And the options you're thinking about are just going to reinforce your own creativity. I know whenever I teach a lot. Whenever I finish a class, I just want to go paint because you get so much inspiration from the other people and you see how much they're getting out of it. It's like, oh, I've got to go do this myself now. So that's exciting. Good for you.
thank you.
I have one more
Yeah.
question. Other than Linda, who that we may know, did you look up to?
Oh, that's a good question. I love all kinds of art, and there are some artists who do work that, like figurative work, that I would point to first, who probably really inspired me the most as an artist out of Canada, Andrew Salgado, who I really love. He does these massive, portraits and figures, and you have to look his work up sometime because there was a similarity. He used to paint very tight and realistic. And then he was the victim of a gay bashing. He came out of a club and people, swarmed him and beat him up, and his face became all disfigured for a while after that. And then he started painting people in a much more distorted way that was actually beautiful. Like he was almost kind of deconstructing the face and putting it back together, and his paintings got bigger and more expressive. And so he took that experience and turned it into something. So I would say him probably first. I love Cahin Wiley. He paints primarily black figures, and I first encountered him. I was still in Ohio. I was working for the Columbus Museum of Art, and he came to do a show there. And what he does, he travels around into the urban areas of wherever he's doing a show and recruits all the models from neighborhoods and that he sees just kind of hanging out on the streets, and takes them back to a studio or wherever and photographs them, but posing like European nobility. So he'll take paintings that are in that museum's collection and recreate them using these models from the neighborhoods and on a grand, massive scale. And so I was really inspired by that because I like the way that he paints people who are not used to being seen or not used to being portrayed, and then they always get to come to the openings and see themselves. And so those two come to mind right away.
Because of my training photography, my graduate school studies, I was fascinated with Francis Bacon.
Oh yeah, I love Francis Bacon. Yes,
Freud and Francis Bacon stuff and so on.
Yes. Oh, there's so many. And honestly, I love going to museums and galleries and looking at really different art than what I make too. I love purely abstract paintings, even though I don't do that because I think we can learn a lot from art that's different than ours. And the one thing I always encourage my students to do is go to a museum or gallery and find the painting or the piece of art, whatever it is, that you like the least, that you think is bad or that you just don't understand. And instead of walking past it, which is what we would normally do, stop and look at it, because that one probably has more to teach you than anything else in that gallery, because you're not blinded by just the fact that you like it or that it matches your aesthetic or whatever, the colors are pretty. You have to stop and really think about, what was this artist trying to communicate? And even if I don't like it, do I understand it? Can I appreciate it? And learning how to appreciate art is different than than liking it or not liking it. So I love art that's really different from mine too, because it makes me think. And that's what I love about teaching. I always have my students doing whatever they want, and it's all different styles, all different mediums, and so there's stuff that comes up that I would never encounter in my own work, and it makes me think outside of my own box, and I love that.
Any other questions? If not, thank you, Paul.
Thank you. It was so fun.